In chapter 9, Paul is going to circle back to some of those issues he had brought up in the first few chapters of 1 Corinthians, and then he's going to end up tying it all together with what we just looked at in the last chapter. He says, "Am I not as free as anyone else? Am I not an apostle? Haven't I seen Jesus our Lord with my own eyes? Isn't it because of my work that you belong to the Lord?" He says in verse 3, "This is my answer to those who question my authority." So maybe he's referring back to the idea that they had their favorites with Apollos and whatever, and is Paul really that important to them? But remember, Paul had established the church on his second missionary journey back in Acts 18. And so Paul is kind of appealing again. He's kind of addressing that once again at this point in his letter. And you can read this for yourself, but he says this in verse 11. "Since we have planted spiritual seed among you, aren't we entitled to a harvest of physical food and drink? And if you support others who preach to you, like maybe they were supporting Apollos, shouldn't we have an even greater right to be supported? But we have never used this right," he said. "We would rather put up with anything than be an obstacle to the good news about Christ." And so now you're going to see in this section that he's going to pivot back over to sort of the spirit of what he was saying in chapter 8. He says, "Even though I am a free man with no master, I have become a slave to all people to bring many to Christ." So it's kind of like, he's giving up his rights. He's giving up what he believes he has earned, his liberties, for the sake of love to bring people to Jesus, kind of like what he was talking about in chapter 8. And he goes on, he says, "When I'm with those who are weak, I share their weakness. For I want to bring the weak to Christ. Yes, I try to find common ground with everyone, doing everything I can to save some." What a great example for us as followers of Jesus as we live in this world and as we try to not be consumer Christians. We try to be people who always are looking outward, always are trying to help someone else pursue God, not just claiming and holding on to our own rights, but really thinking about how we can help other people. He says in verse 24, "Don't you realize that in a race, everyone runs, but only one person gets the prize?" So he says, "Run to win." All athletes are disciplined in their training. They do it to win a prize that will fade away. He says, but we do it for an eternal prize. He says, "So I run with purpose in every step." And the reason he's saying this is he's trying to be an example to the believers in Corinth. He says, run with purpose. Quit, and this was part of their dysfunction, quit making your faith all about you. Quit making your faith so inwardly focused. He says, look outward, consider other people, love them, love God, and help people pursue God. So that's the message here in this chapter. So you're ready to read 1 Corinthians chapter 9. We'll see you tomorrow for chapter 10.